Good afternoon. This public meeting of the Board of Education's Teaching, Learning, and Enrollment Committee for March 12th, 2026 is called to order. Thank you all for being here. Today's agenda includes understanding the planning is done to ensure continuity of instruction for students when a large cohort of students are away for an extended period of time, and an overview of the Growing Great Schools initiative we're beginning. First, we'll begin with introductions. I am Rochelle Chase Miller. I live in Zone 4, and I am the committee chair. I don't know which way we want to go. Let's go this way because there's students.
My name is Mel Schuler. I go to Benson Polytechnic High School. I'm a junior, and I'm very excited to be here.
Hi, my name is Eve. I go to Franklin High School, and I'm also very excited to be here.
I'm Christy Splitt. I'm a school board member that lives in Southwest Portland, and I think we're all really excited to have students at our dais for the first time and for the rest of the school year, so welcome Eva.
I'm Virginia LaForte, school board member, live in Northeast Portland, and excited to have our students with us as well.
Eddie Wong, board chair, just here to observe and partake. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Christina Howard, Senior Chief of Academics. Welcome, students. Thank you for being here.
Kimberly Armstrong, Superintendent.
And Mary Kane, Senior Legal Counsel. Welcome.
Director Chase Miller, we have some virtual board members.
Oh, virtual board members, would you like to introduce yourselves? Roseanne, it looks like Stephanie is talking, but we can't hear her. And we can't hear Patty either.
Okay, anyway, Patty Sullivan here just to observe. I know you've got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about.
Thanks for being here, Patty. Director Sullivan.
Thanks.
Terry's working on it.
Director Engelsman.
I wonder.
Oh, there you go. We can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay. Hi. I'm not sure what that was. Hi, Stephanie Engelsman. I live in Zone 6, Southeast Portland. I am here to observe and get all the good information that's coming.
Glad you both are here. And really glad to have student representatives as part of this committee now. Next, we have public comment. Roseanne, do we have anyone signed up to speak?
Yes, we do.
Excellent. Please make sure when you begin your comments that you clearly state your name and spell your last name. You'll have 2 minutes to speak, and we ask that once you hear the sound of the alarm, please wrap up your comments.
We have Chris Kennedy and Ariana Avina.
Working. My name is Chris Kennedy, Kennedy. I have been an educator and a coach in the community for more than 20 years. I currently teach at Hosford Middle School, and I'm currently the head coach of the Cleveland Middle School track program. And so I'm coming today with a scenario that's happened on our track team. A few years ago, there was a realignment of schools, and there were some kids that came from Creston Elementary School. And they came into our middle school, and there was a very small sliver of kids that came in. And when that happened, one of the biggest things that I think is important is for kids to get community, to build that community, to build that relationship with the students, with the teachers, with other professionals in the building. I think that really allows them to just really kind of fit in and kind of find a sense of belonging. And I've always believed that sports is a huge part of that. It's a great way for kids, especially at a middle school level, to get experience and to push themselves and to strive to try new things even though they feel scared or worried about it. And the most important thing for them is that they have their friend group around them. This year, what has happened is that up until this point, there has been some exceptions put in for the small sliver of kids that got put into our middle school, so that way they could do a hardship and they could still be on our track team. And we have a very proud track team. We're over 263 kids currently. And so we just started our first week of practice. So for me, it's important for the kids that are in the school to be able to be there with their friends on the team. In a scenario where we kind of set them up where it was a very small, select few number of kids that were in our school. So when we had kids sign up for track, they were not able to sign up for our team. I personally was working with a couple of kids who are in my math class, and they're really, they're historically underserved students of color, and they're not superstars. They just want to belong to something. And so I was extremely excited, finally got mom on board. She was ready. We got the sports physical, and then he goes to sign up, and they said, you have to go to Franklin. And he goes, well, I'm not doing that. And so he's not on the team anymore. And so I think there were scenarios in place that brought this about that I agree with and believe in. There was lots of issues several years ago with other sports, and I think, unfortunately, this has been brought into this community. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you. I didn't know if you guys understood that was happening. So I just feel like, to us, it's like the most important thing is to make sure the kids have great experiences and kind of build community within their own school, not at random schools where there's no other people that they know. So that's all I had. So I just want to give you.
Perfect timing, too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll try again for Ariana Avena.
She's got snacks. We'll see what happens. Okay, is it ready for me to start? Okay, wrote it out, so it's going to look performed before pre-written. Oh my God, okay. All right, sorry
She's
guys.
welcome.
This is just, how it is, or most you might know how it is. Okay, hi, my name is Ariana Avena. I'm a parent of a first grader, not this one, but another one, at Buckman Elementary. Buckman's the only elementary school in the Portland Public School District that has an arts focus. Since 1989, arts education has been at the center of how our students learn, grow, and how they build confidence. Yep. Every week, Buckman students participate in visual arts, in dance, in library, and in music. And that means that every single day children walk into a classroom and they're either performing or they're reading or they're expressing themselves. And these classes aren't extra. They are the foundation of our school identity. Buckman is also a Title I school. So for many of our students, these classes are the only opportunity that they might have to learn an instrument, to paint, or explore their creativity at depth. Because of staffing cuts next year, our visual, our arts, music, and library educators are having their hours severely cut. I know what's happening at the district level, right? I'm not here to ask you for more money. Right now, our community has come together, some of us are here today, around a simple proposal that the student investment accounts, funds that are already allocated to our schools, be directed towards our arts teacher positions. We're limited currently in selecting from a really small number of the discretionary positions that all use SIA funds, but it's not meeting our student needs, and it's not what our parents want or what our teachers want. So we're asking today that our existing SIA resources be allocated to directly support the funding of our arts teachers. I did have something I wanted to show you, but I, of course, left it in my other bag. Last week, oh, sorry about that. Okay, last week my daughter, she gave me a picture that she drew. And she said to me, she held it up and she had said, Mom, if you paint your skin white, the ice won't get you. And I know that sounds like such a silly thing to say, right? And such a silly thing to think. But art really does help us process the things that are happening in our world and in our homes. It's really, really important now more than ever that we continue to allocate the resources that we have to protect that for our children. That's all I have. Thanks for dealing with the kid stuff.
Thank you. And if you wanted to email us a photo of that picture, we would be happy to see it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Those are all the people who signed up to speak, but we have a couple of people on the waiting list. Roseanne, do you know if those people are here?
I believe Britt Appleton is here.
Hi. Okay. My name is Britt Appleton, and I'm a parent at Rose City Park Elementary in Northeast Portland. I'm here today to speak about a staffing unassignment happening at my school that would eliminate our building's only Black educator. Article 18.6.2.3 of the PAT contract specifically provides an exception to seniority-based cuts if a transfer would decrease a building's percentage of historically underserved teachers to less than the percentage of historically underserved students. Per the district's synergy data from October 2025, at Rose City Park, 18% of our student body is historically underserved. By unassigning our sole Black teacher, it would be widening our percentage of historically underserved teachers to zero. It would be reducing our percentage to zero and widening the diversity gap at our school from 14% to 18%. It's not okay for the district to discuss the Black Student Success Plan or the Center for Black Student Excellence while simultaneously allowing the removal of the representation that these plans require. Seniority and staffing decisions is a rule, but Article 18.6.2.3 is the corrective lens for that rule. I'm asking this committee to direct HR to apply this exception immediately to Rose City Park and any other schools in a similar position. We have a rapidly growing community petition with signatures from parents who are concerned that their children are losing the only educator who reflects their heritage. Please don't let a budget crisis become an equity crisis at our school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for your testimony. Our schools are facing some really hard things right now, and I appreciate your advocacy and your voice on behalf of your school communities. Recently, questions about the continuity of instruction for students have come up when discussing the policy of field trips, foreign travel, and other off-campus activities. Since the discussion was primarily focused on concerns that learning would be disrupted for the students remaining at school, I asked for an overview of the considerations and planning that happens to ensure the continuity of instruction for students that do not travel. Dr. Howard, would you like to introduce this item?
Sure, thank you. Just Christina also is a problem. Thank you, Director Chase Miller. I'd like to ask Chief of Schools, Dr. Isaac Cardona, to come up and share with you how we work with school teams to make sure learning is not disrupted for students when their peers are out of school for these extended experiences.
Great. Thank you for having me. Sarah. Are you projecting this? What is that? Sorry for the technical difficulties. We're going to get the presentation up for you. Can you see it right now? Yeah, okay. Well, I can begin talking while it's getting put up. So PPS recognizes that certain learning experiences, such as dual language immersion, capstone trips, outdoor school, and other extended field experiences may involve groups of students being off campus for multiple days. During these periods, schools are expected to ensure continuity of instruction for students who remain at school. Site leaders or principals work with grade level teams to plan instructional coverage that maintains alignment to grade level learning goals and classroom routines. I'm going to show an example of this in a second. right, sorry about that. So schools carefully plan for extended learning experiences that take place off campus, again, such as DLI capstone trips or outdoor school. Here's an example of an approval plan for a field trip. These are all done in advance, and they're given to the Senior Director of Schools to help ensure that there's continuity of instruction. For students who remain at school while classmates are traveling, schools coordinate staffing and classroom structures to ensure continued access to grade level instruction. These two boxes are forms that they fill out. One is work expectations for students who are on the trip, and then one is the teaching expectations for students who are on campus while those lessons occur. The standards are the same for both of them, so students should have similar experiences, whether they're off campus or on campus, with what they are learning. At the same time, we ensure that while students are on the trip, they have structured academic work aligned to district standards. And so they will say literally for each day that they're gone, what they are doing, how it aligns to standards, and the work that they are doing. Some of these might be projects that they are completing. It might be learning that they're capturing and then presenting out as research reports. But in both ways, students are learning and they're engaged in the lessons. Oftentimes extended field learning experiences occur by grade level or program, meaning the majority of students participate and only a small number, if any, remain back on campus. In these cases, schools plan staffing to ensure those students continue receiving appropriate instruction. This could be a substitute who is covering a class. When I called a couple of principals, just to ensure that I had the right knowing of what each thing looks like. You know, you might see all capstone students leaving, and then a sub who might speak Mandarin remaining on campus for maybe the Mandarin courses. For most principals, it's the exact same sub every single day while students are off on their field excursion with a teacher. Sometimes it's also an assistant principal or a counselor who might be traveling, so the instruction on campus actually remains the same. When I was a K-8 principal, for example, our 6th grade teachers took turns in the days they would go to outdoor school, so that there was always someone on campus doing instruction. Their blocks might change, but for the most part, they were still receiving the same instruction while on campus. That's the bulk of the presentation. But again, principals, educators, so the teachers put in a lot of work into planning for the field trip, and then this is approved over the course of a couple of months to ensure that there's continuity of instruction while students are gone or for the students who are remaining on campus.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, and thanks for putting this on the agenda. I appreciate it. This was some of my concern. So I think you answered one of my questions in part. And in situations where a class or program participates in a field trip, are substitute teachers ever hired to provide instruction for students who remain at school? It sounds like the answer to that is yes.
And there are some times where they might collapse courses like sections. When I was a K-8 principal, I just had maybe someone teach a double math block for that day, and the next day a double science block if one of those teachers was gone to outdoor school on one of the days. So most times it's a substitute. Sometimes they might configure the school day in a different way.
So for something like outdoor school, that's a program that's offered to every student in the district. When we have a co-located program like our DLI programs, are there ever, I don't understand, I know it works differently than it used to when the complaints were originally filed several years ago. Are there ever teachers that travel and substitutes that are hired to cover the classes and the students that remain on site?
Yes.
Who funds that?
We would at the school level or at the district level.
So the groups that are traveling do not fund the substitute that would be needed.
No, when a teacher is out, we can get substitutes, and so oftentimes the school will just log in like the days, the hours that they would need. It could be a half-day sub or a full-day sub, but is a typical system for requesting those.
Okay, great. That's my question.
I can also answer the last year we had a question like that too, and I think the total dollar amount that PPS paid was $0 because the parent groups fundraised and paid for all the substitutes and the substitute administrator.
Great, thank you all.
Okay.
Can I? Oh, sorry. Sorry,
Yeah,
Director
go ahead,
Chisholm.
Director Engelson.
Thank you. Can I follow up to Chair Wong's question? Will the new policy prevent that from happening now because fundraising for substitutes would be student facing? Will that be no longer an option, or is that still going to be allowed?
So I checked in on a couple of field trips that are happening now. A couple of them were vice principals who are traveling internationally with students. Some were the DLI only teacher where there might not be an impact back on campus. And then some actually were getting subs to remain. And so we are not pivoting currently. So if someone has a substitute already in the system, that is continuing right now for those trips.
I think.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. I just wonder, Chair Wong had just said that in the past, the bill had been zero to the district, which is fantastic, because parents were able to fundraise for those substitutes. Is that going to still be an option because our fundraising policy has changed to no longer allow fundraising for student-facing positions? And obviously a substitute is a student-facing position. Is that...
Director Inglesman, I might need to get back to you on that one. I'm not
Yep.
sure if we've incurred costs in this current year from any.
Oh, I mean, I can answer that. The foundation policy was passed a couple of years ago, and since then, the parent groups have still fundraised for the total cost of the field trips. And because it's not an entire FTE, I don't think it applies in this situation, and it hasn't had an issue in the last couple of years. And the last 2 years, all the total cost to PPS has been $0.
I think I can weigh in just to give the reasoning. I think why there is an exception in the foundation policy that I've never understood why it's there, and I bet that's why it's there, because it says you can spend up to like $2,500 or something like that towards staffing, which would probably cover the cost of a sub for a trip like that. So there is that like little exception. I can't remember the exact dollar amount, but if you look at the last paragraph of that policy or so, you can see that dollar amount, Director Inglesman, if you wanted to.
Thank you. That's great to know.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you. So before we begin our discussion on growing great schools, I want to acknowledge the gravity of the decisions ahead. We recognize that school closures are never easy. They carry real, lasting consequences for our students, families, and staff. Our commitment to a transparent public deliberation means that our internal considerations will be shared openly. This means you'll hear our personal reflections and internal considerations shared openly. We understand that hearing this process unfold can be painful for the community to witness. Please keep in mind that until a formal vote is cast, the thoughts shared today are preliminary reflections, not finalities. There is still a significant journey of public engagement and deep discussion ahead of us before any final decisions are reached. Christina, would you like to introduce this item?
May I just jump in and say I appreciate Chair Chase Miller, you sharing that statement. I just want to underscore and emphasize that, following the public discussion at the board meeting, there were a ton of school communities that were alarmed and wondered if they needed to start mobilizing to speak to you all and share about their school. And there's some unique situations with the distance and just some programming. And so I appreciate the emphasis that this is a journey and that you all will express your opinions, but vote as a collective. And I think that's important for our school communities to hear, because there's already so much uncertainty happening right now across Portland, knowing that there's going to be some uncomfortable topics. And in the end, right, it will be a collective vote, and we have quite a bit of time before we get to that. So just want to say thank you for that statement.
Yeah, and thank you for that.
Yeah, I echo the gratitude and just there's been a lot of conversations even in the principal world too around some of this. So I appreciate that. I think that's very helpful. And so as we shared on Tuesday, today's presentation at this committee is one of several conversations with the board over the coming months. Staff will walk through the data we are seeing, a proposed timeline, and some lessons learned from balancing efforts. I'd like to invite Margaret Calvert up to the table to introduce you and the team, and you'll walk through the Growing Great Schools process and how we're approaching this right-sizing effort.
Good afternoon. I just need to get one more thing organized and I'll be ready. Okay. Good afternoon, directors. It's great to have student representatives with us today. It's nice to meet you and welcome to the space. And Superintendent Armstrong, nice to have you here as well. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you. As we said, we were going to go through a series of conversations. I want to underscore and emphasize all that has been said. What is true for all families is that you get connected to schools, and we hope that there are strong, rich learning experiences that all students and families have. And we recognize that, especially as families enter schools for the first time at kindergarten and make connections to that elementary school for the first time, these are very strong connections. I remember, for example, the first teacher all of my students had was Mrs. Coakley at Vernon Elementary, or K-8 at the time. And it was, she's a paramount person and is historic figure in our family, and I know that everyone enters into schools with very strong connections and hopes for the future, and those ties and those relationships are what is really a strength of what happens in schooling and education. I also want to acknowledge that we're going to be embarking on a conversation over a number of months that will include data and descriptions of what school experiences are like, and that these are deeply personal for people. And we recognize that our collective efforts to shape the conversation, to be respectful and open, and try to be as clear with our intentions around sharing information and providing space for people to give feedback. That was heard loud and clear by the Board of Directors earlier this week, and I echo those same commitments. So thank you for that. So as many of you said earlier, these are similar learning targets to what we had on Tuesday night. The reason that we are coming back is to go a little bit deeper, share a little bit more context, and then also to hear ultimately from you and engage in a conversation. I recognize that there are also some directors online, and look forward to hearing from you and guiding. The hope today really is to focus on some of the pieces of information that will be helpful for us to share and to really to engage in the work session on March 31st. And ultimately lead to sort of a framing conversation in April. So that's our intent today. So these are very similar learning targets they're exactly the same learning targets actually from Tuesday. And they're going to take us into a depth of understanding. So a slightly different frame that may help with the understanding of current context. And then some examples of how we've used value statements, guiding principles, and various things in previous enrollment balancing processes. This is a similar slide that you saw earlier this week, where we see that the trend we are facing declining enrollment, and that is for easily the next decade. We've been facing this for quite some time now. And also what we said earlier this week is it does not arrive at every space at the same time. So what you'll see in this graph is that the change there's a dramatic change and has been a decrease in our elementary student enrollment, and that is the blue line that's at the top of this graph. Coming out of the pandemic, we saw a significant shift in our elementary age students enrolling in our schools. As we mentioned earlier, we're addressing this through the three-phase Growing Great Schools process, which includes enrollment campaigns, and we heard from Chief Gross, and she'll be back up sharing some of her marketing strategies and whatnot. The yellow line in the middle is actually our high school age students. So these are not specific high schools, but these are students that would be in grades 9 through 12. What you'll notice is that it's fairly flat, like there's a slight increase coming out of the pandemic, and the actual decrease in high school enrollment we haven't experienced it yet. So we see the drop on the blue line. It's a leading indicator of what's going to happen in middle and high school, and it has not happened yet in our middle and high schools. The red line at the bottom is middle grades. So these are students in grades 6 through 8, not in K-8s, K-12s, and our middle schools, our 6-8 schools. It mirrors some of what's happening at the high schools. It's fairly flat, and we see some of the changes are coming and are, again, the K-5 experience is a leading indicator for this grade level. If we were to look at localized situations, we will see fluctuations by school as well. Some schools have seen increasing enrollment. We had this conversation with the high schools that when we open a new modernized building, we see an increase in enrollment at high schools. And so when you look at a specific space or a specific part of the city, it is a slightly different picture. And that's part of what we're going to end up talking about over time, is that when we look in the aggregate, we see these trends. When we look locally, there's greater variation in what the experience is and the enrollment. And so that will be part of what we talk about as we move forward. This graph goes back to, we took this back to the early 2000s, the late 2000s, almost 2010s. What it shows is the mix, it's our portfolio mix of school type across the district. So when we look back at 2007, 2008, the light green at the top are our middle schools. So they're 6-8 schools. The darker green below are the number of K-8 schools. It's not the population, it's the actual number of schools. And then you'll see the yellow is the K-5 schools, and then high schools are light blue, and our alternative schools and programs are in the darker blue. What you'll notice over time is that we see that the number of K-8s, we've decreased the number of K-8s that we have across our system. We have increased the number of K-5s, and we've increased the number of middle schools. So part of what you see, and if you'll notice in the year 2016-17, we started to do some grade level reconfiguration. So there are going to be a number of things that we talk about in the coming months. And one is around what is the grade level configuration that we're looking at a particular building site. And so is that experience at K-5, at K-8, a high school? What is that grade band, or K-12? So in 2016, this was the first time that we reconfigured a school from a K-8 into a middle school program. It was at Ockley Green. And so what that impact was not only at the site at Ockley Green, but then it also was what were the implications for the schools in order to create that attendance area meant we had to change some of the K-8s that were adjoining Ockley Green. It's similar to what has happened in Southeast. When we opened Kellogg, we changed the configurations for the K-8s to provide the attendance area for Kellogg Middle School. So the other piece that I just want you to attend to here is that you'll see that the actual number of schools has remained pretty consistent over this time period. And some of what Dr. Armstrong has shared and what we're looking at is this the right mix of schools, and what are the implications for having this number of schools when we're having declining enrollment?
You know, one of the things I'm wondering as you go through the data,
Yeah.
If there could be just some strategic pauses to
Yep.
just see what questions may be there, just to kind of unpack, because we want to give you as much information as possible, and we also want you to be able to ask questions.
I'm glad you said that, because I have a question on this slide, if that's all right. I noticed that in like 14, 15, we had fewer schools than we do now. Do you know why we had that little dip and then return back?
Off the top of my head, I don't, but I'm happy to get it answered.
It looks like it's like a 5-school or so dip, so it doesn't seem like 1 or 2. I would just be curious because I don't think we've opened more schools. Anyway. So we opened 2 middle schools but kept all the other elementaries open?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, it
Yep.
could just be the 2 middle schools then.
So 2000, we had 2016 school year, we opened Ockley Green. We followed that with Tubman and Roseway Heights was so some of the schools Kellogg, for example, actually had been closed and was not a middle school at all. Tubman was reopened as a school, so that could be what some of those small variations are.
I bet that's exactly what it is. I hadn't realized that they'd been closed. I just thought they'd been K-8s that got converted to middle schools.
Yes.
So
Yes, Kellogg was. I mean, is a good example that it was closed and then it was modernized and rebuilt. The site of Harriet Tubman Middle School actually became a swing space for Fabian while Fabian was being built, and then after Fabian was done and the students moved out, then Harriet Tubman Middle School was reopened as a middle school. It had been the Young Women's Academy, and there's lots of history there, but it had been the Young Women's Academy prior to Fabian moving in. Yeah. Anything else about this slide? Happy to answer any other questions on this slide before I move, or our previous slide.
I have
Yes.
one question. You mentioned the decline after the pandemic, and starting our enrollment campaigns. I was wondering if the decline was in response to losing students to private during the pandemic, or if this is reflective of the enrollment cliff that we're starting to experience.
So I think that's a great question. So is it like, I'm going to go back one slide. I think you're saying yep, that's great. So if you look at, there's a fairly steep decline from like 2019-20, which is, tomorrow is actually the 6th anniversary of us going out for COVID. It's the same date, Friday, the 13th in March. So it is, what you see is there were a number of experiences that we had during COVID. I think that we can dig more deeply into this, and I would encourage, if that's something that we would like more information about, Director LaFleur, I'm happy to come back and have a longer discussion. I would say there are two things. There was questions at that time. There were some kindergartners did not enter during the school shutdown and did not enter into online learning at that time. I think the other piece I'm going to say this with caution, but I think that we can go and examine it. What did come and what we have seen coming out of COVID is that there's an increase in the number of online schools, as well as, whether it's private or online. I think that's I don't want to make any statements about that. I'm just saying these are things that we have seen come as a result, and we could go back and look more carefully at that particular time period.
Is it possible is there data that exists that shows us, I don't know if it would be tracked at the state level, how many, understand how to figure out if somebody transfers out of PPS,
yeah,
we have a record of that. Mm-hmm. If they never entered, how do we know where they are? Do we know?
How do we know where they end up?
Does that make sense?
Yes.
How do we know if 20 kindergartners are going to private school if they never registered with PPS in the first place?
Yeah. So I think that there are two pieces, and I will. I can hear Dr. Adams is in the room with us here too, and I'll invite him to come down and answer this question if there's something in addition that he would like to add. But part of what will happen is, can you say one for one where a student goes? Not necessarily. What we can say is, we can say, has the private school enrollment increased? We can make a statement about that. Can we say that it represents what happened in a particular area or part of the city? It's harder to do that. So. I'll see.
The
I got
other
a
thing
thumbs
I'll
up.
say is I think that's great about the kinder. I think when you think of the birth rates and the census on how they make some predictions on enrollment, mm-hmm. I think is that how it's determined, hey, we should have had this many kids. They didn't show up. Where they're at is harder to track. But I will say that how dropouts are counted is when they withdraw from one school and there's no confirmed enrollment records request from any other school, then that's how that's coded as a dropout once you're out of, that first entry grade.
And I think there's some anecdotal pieces. So if there, I'll make a note, are there some time frames that we would like to look at or some other pieces? And I hear, and this came up, I think, a little bit in the Jefferson is Rising as well, Director LaFort, which was, what does a capture rate really mean, and if the capture rates are different in different parts of the city, what does that mean then for enrollment in schools? And so I'm happy to bring back some additional information for that as part of a discussion. Want to go to the next one?
Oh, Director LaForte has a question. Director Englesman.
Thank you. I was just going to pipe in. I'm going to stay off camera just because of my situation right now, but let me lower my hand. I appreciate Director LaForte's questions because I had some similar questions and was going to ask you to go to this slide that we're on. I would love to see, if possible, sort of comparison data between the birth rates and the enrollment rates. And I don't know how we would do that except to sort of say in 2020, this many were born, and in 2020, this many enrolled in kindergarten, even though they're not. And then 5 years later, 2025, this number was born and this many enrolled. It won't, of course, be the same kids enrolling the year that they're born, but it's sort of indicative perhaps of the percentage that are being born who are also then eventually enrolling. I don't know if I'm articulating that well, but I would love to see if this is not only declining enrollment due to declining birth rate, or it's declining enrollment because people are also choosing elsewhere. And so it might be sort of an overlay between birth rates and enrollment rates for us, PPS, and then to Assistant Superintendent Calvert's comments about enrollments at private schools going up might be the third overlay to sort of capture and get an idea. I'd love to see that. And then I also was curious because I wonder whether, I'm not going to articulate this well either, but if elementary school numbers are going down and have been for a while, long enough that we would see it in middle school, are there families who presumably are choosing somewhere else for elementary school and then are choosing us for middle school? Because the elementary school decline looks to have been steadily declining, I don't know, since COVID, basically. And so that's long enough, that's 6 years, that's long enough that we would see the drop off in middle school starting, more so, I think. So I would, again, I'm not articulating this well. I would love to see 2020, we had 10,000 fifth graders, and then we had 8,000 sixth graders the next year. 2021, we had 9,000 fifth graders, and we had 7,000 sixth graders the next year. Does that make sense? Like, I'd love to see a graph that shows how many fifth graders in our district are becoming sixth graders the next year in our district. I think, yeah, and I'm happy to talk offline. I can try to formulate my questions better, but I think that would help. And I wonder if, and I know I'm not saying one way or the other about, I wonder when the policy preventing people from enrolling early, I know we hear about this a lot. I wonder when that took effect to change a petition to enter early, if we see a decline in enrollment then as well. So again, happy to talk offline to articulate myself better, but that would be great for me to, if you're able to produce that, not immediately, but thank you.
I don't know. Good afternoon, Renard Adams, Chief Accountability and Equity Officer. I appreciate your questions, Directors LaForte and Englesman. Our work with the Population Resource Center, they produce our enrollment projections report every year. So much of the information and data points you're asking about are those that they produce for us because they have access to information like birth rates, new housing builds and complex and changes in housing and things like that, and those are available on the website. I can they're thick reports, so we would need to comb through those to pull out the data and the information that you're asking for. But I did want to share that those are available to talk about things like catchment and birth rates and things like that. We have been, since I know I've been here, we've been trying to figure out a way to try to answer the question of where are they at, right? It's a complex question. We don't see many, I haven't heard of really any district across the country that I'm aware of that's seeing an enrollment increase. So the question is sort of where are all these sort of kids go, where are all these students going? And so that's one we're still grappling with. We did do some research we partnered with Chief Candace Gross, our Chief of Communications, to follow up with some parents about why they choose to stay, why they choose to leave, and we're finalizing and synthesizing that information, and we'd be happy to share that with the board as well when we have that.
We would love to see that.
Sorry.
Do you have another question?
I have one more. Yes. Throwing this out there, Director Engelsman said something about early enrollment. We have our policy, September 1st cutoff for our kindergartners, and the question seems to come up. I'm assuming it comes up every year with parents who want to enroll early, who have children that might have, August birthdays coming from the parent of an August and a September birthday. I am wondering if, just sort of thinking out loud here, is that a policy we want to revisit? So if somebody has a child that has a birthday on August 31st and they do want to enroll their child at kindergarten, do we review those? I know that we don't right now, that we have.
I just have to wait because I want to correct it's September 1st is the cutoff. So
Right.
the August 31st kid is in kindergarten.
No, I'm talking on the other side.
Oh, you think
So if
that
you-
they should be able to go a full year early?
Well, it would be a couple days. So for example, like my son has an August birthday. So I could have, sorry. Yes, it's the other, yes, I'm in the opposite
Yes,
world.
I just wanted you to flip it so that it wasn't
thank you. So
confusing
so let's say the
the
birthday is
people.
September
Yeah.
2nd. And this parent wants to enroll their child into kindergarten. Right now, we are a hard no. Is that something as a board that we want to revisit? I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying we have to even have that discussion right now, but I think it's worth considering.
I don't think we can have that conversation now. So maybe that's something we can pick up in policy committee. Director Wong, did you have something you were going to say? Or Chair Wong?
No, I was just going to say that the big drop off happened in 2021, which is 5 years after the 2016 election, saying people didn't want to have babies anymore. I mean, that's a big reason.
Word. Okay, I think we're gonna.
But
go ahead.
The only comment I had was I think if we could move on, because I don't know if, this is interesting, but I don't know how much that deals with boundaries.
Agreed.
I just want to take your Southeast Guiding Coalition brain. It's not just boundaries.
And schools.
Okay, I think we're ready to keep it moving.
Director Sullivan.
Director Sullivan.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it was just last year that was discussed in the policy committee very thoroughly. And Emily Glasgow is the one to talk to if you want to get, the discussion and the reason behind it. So there's a lot of information there you can get easily. And we don't need to talk about it now, but there's definitely sources. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So unless there's any other questions about this, I will continue on. We're good? Okay. So we also shared some lessons learned. This is similar to some of the slides that we had previously. There's some through lines. This part about equity in process and outcomes has surfaced a number of times, and really thinking about what that's going to look like in this particular process is going to, we look forward to some guidance around that, and we can bring some proposals forward. The piece around, we've heard loud and clear a lot around what is the academic experience we want all students to have, and regardless of where they live. So that has been consistent in our enrollment balancing processes for well over 20 years. The piece that we are working on, and we mentioned this before, is that we will have a review of some of the effectiveness of the implementation from Southeast Guiding Coalition. We're in the midst of doing staff focus groups and interviews with principals. We'll be doing a community focus group here within the next month, and we should have some information and to share in the coming month or so. And finally, I think the piece around what is a well-resourced, sustainable school is really, we circle around that general topic a lot. And I think that this, what does that mean and what does that look like? How do we define that as some of what has been part of the enrollment processes here in Portland? As we shared earlier, part of what came from DBRAC and the work with the district-wide boundary review committee were these factors to consider that are embedded in policy. Part of what we will continue to ask is, are there other things that you would like us to consider or to have information brought forth to you? Different parts of these will surface in different spaces. Earlier this week, there was a conversation about transportation, for example, and what does that look like? Does transportation look like really walkability and bikeability at elementary, and does that change as you go to middle school? And thinking about some of those pieces. So I did hear that from you earlier this week, and I appreciate that feedback as we go forward. But again, these are things that are in policy that we will bring forward. They shaped some of the key performance indicators that we built for the Jefferson is Rising process.
I do have one question. I think it's also in policy that students have preferential placement to the school that their siblings went to, their older sibling, right? So I think that's also a consideration when we talk about changing schools, is that it may have a natural phase-in because of that policy.
Yes, that's correct. So there are three questions. They're different questions than we asked earlier. So here the questions for today are slightly different. We had this little bit of a conversation Tuesday night with what guiding principles do you want us to consider? Is there something that does not need to be definitive right now? We just are looking for how can we help get some information to you that would be helpful. What we heard are things like small neighborhood schools, this part about transportation efficiencies. These are some of the things that you said earlier this week. Are our values aligned with outcomes? The preference about ensuring that all students have high quality programming and robust academics regardless of their zip code these are some of the examples that you provided us earlier this week. So this will, as we go through today, there will be an opportunity to have that, that discussion further. Second question to consider is, are there additional information that you need or would like us to gather? So I'm taking notes, and we'll come back and listen to the recording and really hone in on, are there specific things? If you're sending questions to us, that's great. We will be happy to try to frame up the information for a robust discussion. And then the third part is, are there any specific considerations you want us to incorporate? So the next couple of slides, and I'll go through these fairly quickly, just pause me if you need to, because I'm going to provide some examples like I did on Tuesday night, and then really we want to hear what the discussion is amongst you. So there are three, since 2014, these are the three significant enrollment balancing efforts. What you'll notice up here is that two of them had a community survey that was part of it. Many of you may remember the Oregon Kitchen Table Survey, and it actually said, what do you want to see in your schools in 2025? So that was one of the things that happened with DBRAC. There were open houses, focus groups, various advisory committees and structures as we went through, and opportunities for there to be feedback. Jefferson is Rising explicitly had student feedback. I also heard that as potentially an interest in with our student representatives here, that there was, how do we solicit and intentionally hear from students as well, and so that is we will incorporate some opportunities for that as we go. So those are the three sort of different pieces around engagement. When we did DBRAC, there were some consistent things. There was a statement about desired outcomes. So this statement was around strong, stable enrollment in all schools, clear, responsible, transparent process, evidence that the racial equity lens had been used. The approach was there was guidance around enrollment ranges is what came out of it. updated classroom counts of how many were in each building and were they big enough, sort of the capacity beyond just a capacity number for the school as a whole, but actually down to the classroom level, and then looking at special program classroom needs and how those are the same or different based on the design of the program. At that time, the K-8 range was to be somewhere between 470 and 800 students. K-5 was 330 to 720. Middle schools, the ed specs at the time were for 675 students. It was a look across the district as a whole at the time. It was a time of increasing enrollment actually in the district, and we were looking at alleviating the most acute issues, both over enrollment and under enrollment were sort of the pieces that were part of that process. And this was, there was a concerted statement around looking at grade level reconfiguration and really thinking about K-8s to middle schools, which is where you started to see Ockley Green, Tubman, Roseway Heights being reconfigured and leading to those pieces. So that was DBRAC. Southeast balancing the framework and analysis. Director Chair Long has quite a deep experience with this, but it was similar. So optimize the use of facilities. Do we have equitable programming? What was unique about this was this statement about minimizing program co-locations. So that was slightly different in Southeast Guiding Coalition. There was a lot of discussion around our dual language immersion programs, what that meant to have a dual language immersion program side by side with a neighborhood program. If they were the same size or different sizes, there was a lot of conversation about that. Again, there was a statement about the general size of the schools. One of the pieces were looking at school utilizations overall and trying to get above 80%. Proximity took a larger role in this particular one and how close students were to the school. And the piece about this was a phased approach. It was phased and regional. So all of the adjustments were made within Southeast and within a specific set of schools, and phase 1 and phase 2. And then the last piece about this is just sunsetting dual assignment. Again, this is a regional approach. There's thresholds. We introduced the notion of a threshold enrollments. But again, the idea was assuring comparable curriculum and programming across high schools, these 4 high schools, while also having a specific interest in increasing enrollment at Jefferson. So they take slightly different, there's some things that are very common across these, and they also take slightly different approaches. What we heard on Tuesday was, let's look system-wide and to think about what that looks like. So this was a timeline. We also heard from you that the timeline in general sounded like it was reasonable. The specifics seemed like we need to have a little more discussion. And that the goal would be a vote potentially sometime in winter, whether it's December or, right now it's penciled in as a vote in December. So that's sort of some of the backdrop of what the pieces are. I'm going to put these 3 questions back up. So again, are there guiding principles you want us to consider? What additional information would be helpful? We really want to provide and use your time wisely, as we respect that you are volunteers in this process and appreciate your time. So how do we get the information that you will need and find useful? Happy to frame it up in a variety of ways. I also heard very clearly from you that you want something. You don't want a blank slate. We're not starting from a blank canvas. Provide some frameworks, allow for there to be some pushback, and to think through, or robust discussion as the case may be, as we go through the process. And then finally, is there something specifically you want us to incorporate? So we have also brought some examples of a framework that Denver Public Schools used. So there are some things that we can bring so that you have something to look at that is explicit. Some are things that we have done, and then there's some other examples that we can bring. We actually just were on the phone this morning with Beaverton School District with some of their folks talking through what their strategies were. So with that, I'm going to pause, and it's questions and or discussion about specific things to help guide us.
Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. Just a couple of things as I reflect back on the board meeting on Tuesday. one of the things that will be helpful for me and the team is to get to the details of the things that you all bring up. Like, for instance, I know on Tuesday it was look at all focus option schools. I guess my question would be, what specifically would you like us to bring back on focus option schools? The other one was like K-8s, the previous decision to revert to middle schools. But, you know, we also have some outliers out there. Like, I will use the example of Skyline that is way out there near Scappoose, if I'm saying that correctly. And a city I have not yet been to, but going to the school, I felt like I was going to another state. And so that K-8, like, bring us data on like travel times, because there might be some things where we're not able to make like just some uniform decision on, you know, end all K-8s, because there's some complicated pieces across the city. And so it will help us with, you know, I get that you all are putting out some preferences and some statements, but like, what are the details that you want us to bring back based on some of those overarching statements that you made on Tuesday or that you may be sitting with today?
I feel like I want to respond to that with like an illustrative example, and I'm gonna do the thing with using ants' names again to avoid trouble for the names of the schools. But like, I think that for me personally, when I bring up focus options in K-8s, I think what I'm trying to say is I want those conversations on the table. And not personally, I wouldn't necessarily want an approach where it's like, we're going to shut them all down or change all of them, but more like, I want those discussions to be on the table as we look at areas where we have opportunities, if that makes sense. And as we get into guiding principles, it might make more sense. But like, to give an example, if there's a focus option school that is in an area and it's taking students from neighborhood schools nearby for the most part, and those neighborhood schools would have higher enrollment if that school wasn't there, and that school's not serving a particular high needs population. For example, like a dual language immersion program, I would say serves like this equity function and might have a lot of kids that are underserved in some way. So that, for example, would make that less of an interesting conversation. But where you're looking at a school and saying, enrollment's down, but then there's a focus option school less than a mile away that's taking 50 kids from that neighborhood school, that to me is where I want to see that conversation happen. You know, just so it would depend on like a case-by-case basis, less of a let's look at them holistically. It's more like, where there are opportunities that we can solve these sort of enrollment issues in creative ways. What I don't want us to do is say, this is just a discussion about neighborhood schools. I'd prefer one where neighborhood schools are pretty well protected to keep those communities together. But like, okay, so like, how do we have like a balanced approach so that we're including some K-8s that might change over maybe, or we're going to change a focus option. Or I keep wondering, what if the focus option opens up and becomes where you can there's one that I know of, no name, that or a couple, the one was here tonight, where it's got a neighborhood catchment and you can lottery in. Like that model, that seems like something we could look at instead of them just being lottery only. So I just think it's more of a like, where there are opportunities, let's keep our minds open and our doors open, and in the end have a balanced approach so that we don't end up with a situation where it's like all of this type of school were safe and untouched. I think it should be like every part of the city and every type of school should be part of the calculus. Does that make sense? And is that helpful?
It's very, very helpful. And I think a couple of things that I believe what would be maybe roots of some of those talking points, or even things that we look at, is let's maybe challenge some of the assumptions that if the kiddos didn't attend that focus option, they would go to neighborhood school A because it's close by, right? So that lets me and the team know that we're going to look for data that, like, what is the profile of a student? Why are the families accessing this program? And so I appreciate the clarity on, you just want to make sure that we're taking an approach that is across Portland and not focusing on one specific profile. And I think that is what we envision as well. So that's very helpful.
Others might disagree or agree, but I just wanted to share that, hopefully that, I mean, at least from me, because I know I was one of the people that brought that up.
I agree. And I think for me in this conversation, it's important that nothing be off the table. Because I don't, we have a big puzzle to solve, and, we might need all of the pieces. But I also think, if we're taking an equity approach, that's not like a broad brush approach, right? That means we're looking at the skylines and like, is it fair and reasonable to lump them into, let's pretend we said no more K-8s, like, would that be serving those kids in that community well? And I think equity has to guide this conversation. So making sure that we are being mindful of what's fair and what's in the best interest of kids and families. I also want to make sure that when one thing that I think, which question did this speak to? A consideration I want y'all to incorporate is when we ask you something or express something that we'd like to see, I would love it if you could include in that any unintended consequences. Because we might think that we have a great idea, but we don't have the full picture like you all do. So I would like you all to feel empowered to say, if we do this, it means that 47 children won't have bus access or whatever the case may be. But I would like us to be able to see both the pros and the cons to decisions we're looking at.
I'll pile on. Regarding the focus options, I would like to know, do our focus options have a disproportionate impact on schools in our lower income neighborhoods? For example, do we have a larger exodus from our elementary schools in North Portland going to focus options in other areas of the city? What does that look like? And then I just want to share my thoughts I do believe that by operating K through 8 and middle school models, by doing both, that over time we've really created a system in which students are having different educational experiences depending on where they live and which school they attend. And that's something I would like to see, and which is why I'm very passionate about this. I feel like this may be the one opportunity we have to get this right, although I do believe there maybe Skyline might be an example where we do have to make an exception, but we need to talk to those families and look at that, because they may want this model because of the opportunities. The middle school model in PPS offers more robust programming and more robust electives like band and like choir, and these programs, growing them at the middle school level is good for our high schools. So I just want to keep that in mind. I feel like doing this well could be a really critical piece to help us retain families within PPS.
I was thinking it might actually even be a cool idea. I mean, since you mentioned Skyline, knowing that those kiddos eventually make their way to Lincoln, that we plan even some focus groups with students at the high school level based on the routes that they went, to be able to collect some information. I know we have 2 students here, and I don't know how you all feel about the opportunities to hear directly from students about their pathways and programs and what access they feel that they were denied or that they were able to access. So just want to acknowledge this might be a great opportunity to also build in and rely on student voice too.
I also want to note we have Director Sullivan, Director Inglesman have questions.
I should have said this at the start. I was thinking we could do our practice and make our way across. So Chair Wong, do you have anything?
Yeah, how much time do I have? I like what everyone else previously said. I think if there's opportunities for K through 8s to be turned into middle school and elementary school, I think this is a great time to do it. But I also understand that there are some exceptions that make it very difficult. So I'm fine with that. I love the statement about the unintended consequences, to make sure that we're very blunt and forward with that. One perfect example was like we had public comment today from a teacher when the SCGC was rolled out, it didn't consider in the fact that, you know, the athletics program was lagging behind in terms of how it was organized. And so now we have these situations all over the district. So I think things like that to be fixed, which leads into my one big concern I have is the split feeder situation. I mean, currently my daughter is not going to any school that doesn't have a split feeder situation. She doesn't get to stay with half her classmates in elementary school, doesn't stay with half her class in middle school. And, you know, it's kind of weird. And so that, you know, not besides as a personal thing, I mean, it's causing some issues all around, you know, just like the teacher who came in for public comment. I think that in terms of focus option schools, I do agree, 100% agree, everything needs to be on the table. I'm kind of undecided whether one way or the other. However, I do think that there is an issue where some focus options are drawing from some schools more than others, causing issues, especially when we have some focus option schools that are, I'm just going to be blunt, whiter than their neighborhood. And there's some reasons about, you know, for example, you know, I don't want to like not say it because there are situations where race does play a factor in this and how people decide to enroll their schools. And I want to make sure that we are centering equity and making sure that the kids from Title I schools are not suffering because of choice, quote unquote choice. I think I have everything. But yeah, I like what everyone else has said, and I also 100% agree that everything needs to be on the table. We really need to look at the whole district, especially like high school balancing enrollment. I mean, I think there's some needs to be shuffling around there. I mean, probably not for long, and probably because of the downward enrollment, like Grant is over enrolled, right? And Franklin is also pretty stuffed. And so things like that it's a great opportunity to fix things. I mean, people are bumping shoulders walking around the hallway, so yeah. I'm done.
I love that. I'm just inserting my comments. I'm going to apologize up front. I love the idea about finding out some of those areas where we may have some misfires and that need some technical fixes immediately. And I'm wondering if maybe the team and I can just front load, like, what are some things that are sitting out there that we've been hearing about over time that we need to put at the top of the list? And then the other thing that I'll say, and I know this, you know, I mean this in all due respect, is that sometimes in the quest, I'm going to use foundations as an example, in a quest to make things equitable, we move towards making things equal, thereby disrupting equity. And so I want to make sure that that's a balanced conversation so that we're not like using a strategy, well, we just want everyone in an equal fashion, and thereby creating more inequitable systems and things. And so, you know, I'm going to encourage us to bring forth the equity wheel that we typically use when making decisions internally, and maybe walking through an exercise like that for the group as well.
Love that too. Director Sullivan, is your hand newly up or?
Yeah, I think that Eddie summarized very well what you all said. Totally agree. I think I've heard the problems that some of the neighborhood kids who want to go just to the neighborhood school, the schools have problems because so many leave to go to, you know, focus option schools. So I think that's something to look at. But yeah, I think we're starting with a really good base and just work from there. And I think we all want what we can get the best for all the kids. So I have nothing new to add.
Thank you. Director Engelsman?
Thank you. I have a couple of comments or thoughts. One, to that teacher or track person who made comment earlier, I think it would be wonderful if we didn't split elementary schools and that the entire cohort of an elementary school could go to middle school together. I know it's possibly challenging, but in that big transition time, even if people aren't friends, they then see each other as they go from a school of 300 to a school of 500, they sort of see each other, and there is, I guess it would be much more than. Never mind. You know what I'm saying. A group. I guess a school is 300. The fifth grade would be maybe 60. So if 60 kids are going into a school of 500, to see each other could be really positive for the students leaving elementary school going to middle school. The other thing that a lot of people have heard me say is I would love, if possible, and we should be able to get this data because we have people applying to lottery schools for kindergarten. And so we have them in a system as applying. I would love to know how many of them don't come to PPS if they don't get their lottery choice. Because I have often wondered, and again, this could be like an unintended consequence, there might be that I'm not thinking through, but I've often wondered if we create an idea, which I don't believe at all in, but if we create an idea to people, oh, you didn't get Buckman, you didn't get your DLI, you didn't get, whatever you're applying for, you have to just go to your neighborhood school. You're not getting as great of an education because the neighborhood school is not lottery. I wonder if we're creating, I'm missing the term, but this in someone's minds, oh, my kid didn't get the French immersion program. And so they're missing out. They're not going to get as best of an education as possible. And so I think it would be great to see the numbers. How many do we lose because they go elsewhere when they don't get their lottery opportunity or their lottery request? And following that idea, I would love to know, and there are likely unintended consequences, I would love to know what happened if we just let everyone who wanted to get in. So if all 150 on Da Vinci's waitlist got in, or if however many are on the French immersion, or however many are on Winter Haven's waitlist, what if we just let them in and we figured out a way to create schools that could house that many people, could educate that many kids, but it no longer felt like I'm not getting the education that I think is best for my kids. So now that I've started thinking about French immersion, we didn't get it, I should go to one of those private French schools. And it would be challenging, of course, for the staffing. And so maybe it has to happen 2 years in advance. Like, you apply for this middle school in 4th grade, and so we know you're coming and we can project for that. But I do often wonder if we are sort of creating a thought problem to people. And then to the schools, I had one more comment that I wish I had addressed at the meeting on Tuesday, but I heard a comment about the idea that the small neighborhood schools that are trying to offer as much as they can and are frankly competing against all the lottery schools that perhaps people think are offering more to their students' education. I heard comment about that them trying to stay small, and my experience in talking to parents and talking to principals around the district is that those schools are absolutely not trying to stay small, that they are out doing outreach, they are trying to make themselves look as good as possible to the community, to draw the community in, because they know that it benefits them to have more students, enrollment, and all of the thoughts. So I just wanted to correct that idea from actual conversations with outreach and advocacy families and principals alike of these, quote, smaller neighborhood schools, that they are desperately trying to grow their enrollment. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Do our student representatives have any comments or questions?
Yes, I wanted to say something about what you said about possibly having groups within schools to make sure people feel connected to the people they went to elementary and middle school with. I think I have kind of a unique perspective being in Benson because we are a magnet school. I think I know one other junior who I went to middle school with, but we have different I think we have different ways of creating community within our schools because we're so connected within our majors and everything. And so I think it's kind of like two different ways of looking at it. Like, yes, we do want kids to be connected with who they knew when they were in elementary school and everything, but sometimes it's like great to be exposed to different perspectives of like people from across the city, because like a lot of my friends don't live anywhere near me, and so I get to go like see different parts of the city that I never would be able to explore on my own when I hang out with them and everything. So I think there's different perspectives about like connectivity for kids based on like where they live and where they went to elementary and middle school.
And to add on to that, I grew up going to West Palhurst Elementary in David Douglas. So, and then I didn't move that far because I ended up at Franklin. But I think, like, I know nobody. Actually, I know one person that I knew, but she didn't go to my elementary school. And so I think, like, it's cool to meet new people, and, like, I used to not really explore the area that I live, but I do understand how that is important and how building a community over time like that is important. And so I think that having kind of a mix may be important for student connection and experiencing the places that we live. And there was something earlier in the presentation talking about losing students to online. Mm-hmm. I went online after the pandemic and then came back for high school. So I know that was the case for a lot of kids, especially with like mental health and that kind of stuff during the pandemic. And so I would be interested in hearing more from the students on, like, if they knew kids who had similar perspectives from mine of going online and coming back, or if they started online. Like, I went to a K through 12 online, and there were a lot of kindergartners when I was there. So I would be very curious to see that.
I'm so glad we have student representation on this committee now. Thank you both for your thoughts. We are about at time.
What about
Do we
those
have
of us that didn't get?
Oh, shoot.
Hold on. Aren't there
sorry.
3 of us still? Did you
Didn't
feel like
we?
you're good?
I thought we went all the way around.
Because I just said
thought we started with you.
responded to her opening thing.
Oh, my bad.
I didn't get my guy. Is it okay
My
if
bad.
I do
Yeah.
mine real quick?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll be super quick. I have them written down, so that should help. There's something that hasn't come up. The split feeder thing came up, and I actually don't have super strong feelings about split feeders. However, when we're talking about having some schools close, one of my foundational theories is that the more that we could provide them the most familiar faces at the new school, the better. So I love the idea of taking 2 schools and putting them together. Or if we take if a school is closing, we take half those kids to one school and half to another, and create bigger schools. So I would hope that what I wouldn't want to do is have a school close and then divide those kids up to 5 different schools. So I will be a big fan of it. It doesn't need to be 100% of them, although I think that's nifty. But I think just making sure that they do have at least some, because these are elementary school kids I'm mostly thinking about, where it might be a little less exciting to meet new people yet. I love the idea of the K-8 conversation. I also love the idea of finding out how K-8 families actually feel about being at a K-8. Like, how do the 6, 7, 8 parents and kids feel? I think that might be helpful to tease out at some point. We already talked about equity and being thoughtful about our most vulnerable kids. I think that I love thinking about consolidation over closure, just for what it's worth. That's like a guiding principle for me. So that those schools we're creating we can share about how these schools are going to be a better option. I love looking at building deferred maintenance. If there's buildings that we should just not be investing any more money in, then that would be, to me, a good building to consider letting go of. I would be interested in that conversation. I would even be interested in just looking at what came out of the one 10 years ago about what people want to see at every school. And kind of where we don't have that. Is it we want to see at least 2 sections at each grade level? That's a sign of a school that we think is then going to have the resources. I also think looking at per student costs would be smart. Schools where we're paying significantly more per student, in addition to just like whatever the Title I bump would be, for example. I just think that's interesting to consider. So a guiding principle to me will be looking at per student cost and making sure that we don't have inefficient school models. Like if we're investing more in a kid, I want it to be because that kid needs more investment, not because where they're going to school is for whatever reason costing more money. I do think neighborhood schools are a real value of mine, and I'm not talking about the special ed model, but the just schools in neighborhoods. And then I also think that we talked about this before, but like I think that having an approach where in the end, like every part of the city is affected, or at least if not every part, it's not like in one specific area, so that it's like everybody's kind of in it together, if that makes sense, but kind of base it on population. So if you're at a place where there's declining, where you can show that there's like not very many kids living or something, then that would be worth. And then the other thing that's a guiding principle for me is having transition plans in place, so that when and I talked about this the other night, but more as a engagement process, but I think for me it's a guiding principle too, that when we're talking to people about what's going to be happening on the back end of all this, we can be telling them the story of what it's going to be like and how that's going to go, and not be like, we'll work it out later, you know. So those are my guiding principles. But keeping kids together, being thoughtful about most vulnerable kids is probably the most important. And I also want to remind us that growing great schools as a subject line might not get the attention that we need. I know that Margaret has learned that already, but I think we need to make sure that we're really thoughtful in communication, so that we are making it really clear we're talking to people about when the time comes, even if it isn't the best messaging. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for letting me come back. I wrote them all down. I was ready.
Well, your thoughts made me think additional thoughts. No, that's okay. I don't want to forget these things. And maybe this first one is what you were saying, but maybe it wasn't. But I would like us to be paying attention to where we are consolidating and moving kids into the safest seismic buildings as we're having this conversation about the amount of funds we have for doing the seismic work and the need around that. Like, let's make our dollars go further by leveraging the buildings that are the safest and putting kids there. Also, what Christy said about consolidations over closures. As we go through this process, I would like us to think about this as kind of like blending families, you know? So if one school is moving into another school community, doing that in a way where the first school community doesn't feel like their identity is being lost, or the things that are important to them in their school community and meaningful, like those traditions and rituals and routines should go with them and become a part of the new school's identity as well, and like really do like a blending rather than a depositing of just kids into a new physical space without care for the culture piece. Okay, I'm done now. Does anyone else have any?
I just have a clarifying question. I'm just curious what, in your mind, the difference between closing and consolidation. I mean, I can guess, but I just want to be 100% clear. Maybe Chrissy, since you started that point.
I guess the way that I'm thinking about that goes back to that keeping kids together idea, where if we're consolidating, 3 schools into 2, or consolidating 2 schools into 1, to me, I would prefer that be the approach that we're taking versus closing a school and then just redistricting, however, like grabbing kids and putting them in just closing a school and then drawing the boundaries that just send 30 of them to this one and 30 to that one. That's what I'm thinking about. I kind of said the same thing twice, but
yeah, that's what I thought. I just want to be clear. Thank you. I agree.
Director Sullivan, is your hand up from before, or do you have a new thing to say? Oh, hi, Kitty.
It's up. Oh, you see my kitty? It's up because I forgot to put it down.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we didn't cut you off.
I will now put it down. Okay. Oh, I'm trying to. My cat's bothering me.
All right.
So
I think
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I
You
was
go
just
ahead.
going to say there are a couple things, just some takeaways that I heard that I just want to lift up. I hear an interest in saying let's have a balanced approach, that we're looking at the portfolio overall and locally, at the and that there will be some criteria that we will have to recognize that there's going to be a balance of or a mixture of schools, and that may include a mixture of school configurations, but there should be a way that we're looking at those, that we want to really attend to and make sure that we're attending to unintended consequences. I'm hearing quite a bit about split feeders and sort of what that looks like and means as we go through, and some pieces around, I think what I believe I heard Dr. Armstrong say is that there may be some things that we need to look at or address immediately as we go through, and that would be also part of what the analysis would be as we go forward. And I appreciate the statement of everything is on the table, right? And so what does that look like when we're looking at things not in a localized way, but we're going to end up going between a global view, but then also really be specific. I appreciate the students' comments about what your experiences are, and then really thinking about how do we incorporate intentionally the experiences of students that may be most impacted and families that most be impacted. And so also just relying on the wisdom of our youth. So appreciate the afternoon.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the information and the opportunity to get to share what we're thinking so far.
I think you know what I'm going to say. We were not laughing at you. We were laughing at Patty's cat, which I don't know if you could. Oh, you could see it.
I could see
okay,
it. So
we're really sorry.
I was trying to.
We were trying really hard.
I appreciate the clarity, and also want to acknowledge that that when we're at our homes, there's lots of family members that may join us in these conversations. So thank you for that.
Are there any topics that anyone would like us to consider for future board meetings or future committee meetings?
I guess we kind of heard one earlier, but I think it would be interesting because I think it's like related but sidebar, and probably more related to Candace's phase 1 enrollment conversation. But I do think as we're figuring out more information about the enrollment decline and just like understanding that, I think that would be helpful. It relates to this, but it's not, I don't think it necessarily, I think it can come alongside the growing great schools, but I think it helps for us to be able to understand it, but also so that we can help the public understand it. And so I think the more that we can kind of shine a light on that going forward, I think that would be a cool topic for us to have at some point. Maybe even the PSU folks come and tell us about their report or whatever floats your all's boat, but I think that would be a good topic in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a good parallel conversation to have. And I mean, both in terms of like why we're losing families, but also what might bring families back and what we can care for in the restructure.
I think maybe for the focus option conversation, wondering about the impact. Is there a disproportionate impact on certain schools and or neighborhoods? Maybe we can cover that at a regular board meeting, but maybe we cover it in TLE. Maybe that
might also be helpful just to have a presentation on what the focus options are and that whole ball of wax.
Yes.
Okay, any other topics? All right. Our next meeting of the Teaching, Learning, and Enrollment Committee is scheduled for April 9th. At that meeting, we will receive an overview of the multiple language learners services we provide at PPS. And this meeting is adjourned.